What's up, everybody? It's your man, MG Marcus Grant. And are you looking to stay up to date with the latest goings-on of your favorite, or maybe not so favorite NFL team? Well, how do you do that? You go directly to the source. Every week, Matty Kroll is doing just that with On The Beat, talking to beat reporters from across the National Football League. Be sure to check it out.
Yo, what's going on, y'all? It's your boy, it's your host, Calvin Domingo, a.k.a. Steezy A. Smith. And today, I got a familiar guest with me. As you guys already know by now, I have V.I.G. And if you guys have been keeping tabs, he actually used to cover the LA Chargers for the Los Angeles Daily News, or for the LA Daily News, the OC Register, and the SoCal News Group. Please welcome him back, ladies and gentlemen. Without further ado, Mr. Gilbert Manzano. How you doing, brother?
Doing well, man. Like you mentioned, yeah, new beat, same job still, but things are changing, kind of the same, it's a new beat, but, same old kind of NFL season, training camp, summer. I'm out there in the sun. I'm Mexican, so I'm already dark, but I'm getting that extra brown color there, a little higher this time of year. So I got to work on my tan. But I'm enjoying myself out there, learning names, meeting new people, seeing how the Rams operate, and just being around that winning culture. People are really happy to be out there at training camp because they just won the Super Bowl. So it's cool to see that kind of that glow and vibe of winning the Super Bowl. But then it's kind of like that shift. Okay, now you got to do it again. So it's been cool to see that from up close.
Right, bro. And I just wanted to say, if I haven't already, congratulations. I know the Chargers are definitely a team that a lot of people want to cover, but the Rams, like you mentioned, they're coming off they're the reigning defending Super Bowl champions. And so who wouldn't want to cover a team like that, especially being around the facilities, being around the guys? They're fresh off a championship. So,
yeah.
Again, congratulations. And real quick, I just wanted to ask, bro, what went into the switch? Did you have any say in it whatsoever? And what's the atmosphere like covering a team that just won it all?
Yeah, it was, I guess, a few months in the works behind the scenes. Like I had an idea this could happen. The former beat reporter, Kevin Modesti, shout out to Kevin. He did a great job covering the Rams for the newspaper. And, he wanted like a switch. So we were talking, and he wanted to do, something else, maybe more like columns and working on newsletters. He wanted a different pace. So we were talking, but it was kind of one of those things where I like covering the Chargers. I was enjoying the Chargers. I love the fan base there. They treated me well. We had many great memories. People read my work. I felt like people came to me for Chargers news. And it takes time, Calvin, to really get established on a new team, on a new beat, to get sources, connections, people to trust you. And I was finally there. 4 years, like maybe 1 or 2 years, you're kind of still like, okay, who's this guy? And on that guy, he does good work. And then year 3 and 4, now people really know you. People are know you by name and stuff like that. So that was hard to give up. And I just the biggest thing, I enjoyed my time. Like when you go to work and you're covering football, you're getting paid to watch football, and you like the people around you. That was the best thing. But in any business, I guess when you get comfortable, that's not a good thing. You have to have new challenges. You got to expand, and especially in this business, because my goals is to become eventually maybe a national reporter. And the more people the more teams that contact book gets bigger. It helps you out in the long run, and obviously there's some other stuff behind the scenes. So it wasn't an easy decision, but I think for me and my family, and getting to still being in Los Angeles where I grew up, it worked out in the end. So hopefully, it's not a real goodbye with the Chargers. Maybe I could still, cover a game or two whenever I can. But I am excited and very pleased with the way things have gone with the Rams the last couple of weeks.
Right. And Gilbert, I'm not saying, well, you know how they say, right? It's not about what you know, it's about who you know. And so, with what you're saying, with what you're doing, I think it's only a matter of time. I mean, you've covered the Raiders, you've covered the Chargers, and now it's going to be the Rams. But real quick, I'm curious, do you hit up the players and let them know that you're going? Do the organizations do that? Or have you actually reached out to any Chargers players yet?
Yeah, you talk to some players, some coaches, the PR staff, everybody, pretty much people who needed to know before I announced it on Twitter. They already knew. They knew it was coming. I don't want people to find out on social media because, there were some good connections with the Chargers, and they treated me well. Like, with the Raiders, I was still trying to, figure it out. I was like, they call it the number 2 kind of role for beat reporters. And, I wasn't the full-time, the face that And with the Chargers, that's where it became, I was a guy. And they really helped me get used to that, acclimated. And by year 4, it was just a great working relationship. So, yeah, I told them, You know, Brandon Staley, GM Tom Telesco gave me some kind words, and you know, they joked that, you know, they probably wouldn't give me a call or a text if they didn't like me. So, you know, I guess I did my job properly. I was professional and fair, and that's what you want when you leave a beat.
Every single time. Gilbert, and I want to transition now over to, before we talk about the Rams, and we've talked about this before, but Compas on the Beat. And I saw that you guys recently launched your latest show featuring combat sports. Unfortunately, I haven't had a chance to watch the full interview, and I will before their fight. But yo, Triple G, Canelo, I'm for sure going to watch that. But until I do, I want to ask you, what were some of your biggest takeaways from your interview with Triple G?
Yeah, you know, he seemed pretty laid back. You know, I've covered Triple G in years past, and I used to be a boxing reporter at the Las Vegas Review Journal. So, you know, I had to tap into my old contacts and the boxing community to get Triple G on the show. And they were great. They got him on with me. But there was one time where I went to Triple G's camp in Big Bear, and you know, he was all business. Like, I think it was the first fight against Canelo, and he's like, hey, don't record this, don't do that. And he has his routine. Like, that's his palace right there, his workplace. So I think maybe when I got him on the laptop and his workout was over, he was like, okay, let's do this. And my co-host Fernando Ramirez just had such a good vibe. I think he was feeding off of that. And like, oh, these guys are cool. So, you know, we had some fun. That's what the podcast is about. It's a different feel from being a beat reporter. It's a little more laid back, a little more fun, but still we have that background of being reporters where, okay, give us some stuff, man. We need to know about this fight camp. So he got discouraged that the fight wouldn't happen. You know, after 4 years of waiting for the rematch, you know, the trilogy, he joked that he's going to get the fight when he was 50 years old. So I think he's just very excited to get a fight. And the whole pandemic thing, he was inactive, and it was just hard to get fights. So I think for him to be back in a mega fight, for maybe his last fight, he seemed like he was enjoying it, and he seems very excited about it. So, you know, when you check out the interview on Compas on the Beat, the YouTube channel or Spotify or Apple, you're gonna hear how happy he is to finally have a big fight and to maybe, you know, correct some mistakes, because he's not happy with the judges from the previous fights, but he still lost that one fight. So I think he wants to correct that mistake, and he's excited to get the opportunity.
Wow, I can't wait. I mean, oh my gosh, that's next month, right?
Yeah, September 17, Las Vegas, T-Mobile Arena. So, you know, maybe I can make it out there, but it's football season.
Oh, that's right. That's right. But hey, to the people out there, y'all, I got to shout them out. But Compas on the Beat, Instagram. I think you guys have Twitter, right?
Yeah.
Twitter,
TV.
YouTube. Be sure to subscribe, follow, tap in. They have a whole bunch of exclusive interviews, great content. I love keeping up with those guys over there. And so if you're tired of reading Gilbert's articles and maybe you want to watch them on the screen, then be sure to tap into Compas on the Beat. But Gilbert, actually, no, real quick before we talk about football, I'm just curious. I know this was a while ago now, but I also saw that interview with Ryan Garcia. So just quickly, I wanted to ask, brother, is he going to fight Tank at the end of this year?
He's pushing hard, and that'll be a really exciting fight, especially for the younger generation. Like, right. you know, people my age already got the Canelo Triple G, but now the younger crowd wants to see Ryan Garcia, Gervonta Tank Davis. So he's pushing for it, and it sounds like Tank wants to fight too. And it kind of helps that Tank Davis is sort of a free agent. Like, he's not exclusively signed to Mayweather Promotion. So he's maybe like, hey, if you want to get me for one more fight, Mayweather, you better make that fight happen. So I think he's doing that. And I think maybe Tank Davis feels like he's better than Ryan Garcia. So it's kind of a win-win, because maybe he feels like he's a level above on the competition. But Ryan Garcia knows how to sell a fight. He is a mega star in his own right. So combine those two, it's a big payday. So, but again, Ryan Garcia has surprised me, and especially that last fight. He came in shape. He was strong, and it's not just a left hook. He was fine putting a right hand, hitting the body. Moving around a little more, maybe he has to work on his defense a little better, because when you get caught from Tank Davis, you might go down. But overall, the offensive arsenal got bigger. So that fight to me is very intriguing now, because it might be, actually it is, it would be Gervonta Davis' biggest fight of his career.
It would be. And I mean, he's a cash cow already. And so you combine that, like you said, with Ryan Garcia and his fame and the attention that he brings to the table. I mean, oh my gosh. My brother was talking about how this could be the biggest fight since Mayweather and Pacquiao. I mean, money-wise, I don't know if it'll get to that level, but there's definitely, and clearly is a whole bunch of hype, Gilbert. So we'll definitely wait and see what happens there. But let's talk some LA Rams. And as you know, I'm a Seahawks guy, so this isn't my favorite subject or team to talk about. But you are a good friend of mine. You are covering the Rams, and so I'm pretty sure this isn't going to be our first nor last conversation regarding the Rams. But like we talked about, these guys are the reigning, defending Super Bowl champions, and despite having added Bobby Wagner, Allen Robinson, Troy Hill, who you spoke glowingly about in one of your recent articles, Vegas doesn't have the Rams as any of the favorites to win the Super Bowl. I see the Bills, the Buccaneers, the Chiefs all have better odds. Vegas isn't always right, but they're not always wrong. Do they get it wrong here with the odds?
Yeah, actually, my colleague Kevin Modesti brought that up. He said the Rams are number 4 in most sports books in Las Vegas, and it kind of feels a little like that's low for a defending champion. You think it would be second, third, before. I think people maybe are saying, because also the bigger factor is that it's hard to repeat, and then
Really?
that's kind of the biggest thing. So, and they lost Von Miller, they lost a few pieces, so maybe when you see what the Bills are doing, they're loaded. Obviously, the Chiefs are always going to be around. The Buccaneers reloaded, so it's tough, But maybe it feels about right because the Rams have some things to work on. They have some issues right now with the quarterback, Stafford. They lost one of the key wide receivers. They got to replace Von Miller. So maybe for the Rams, it's better this way because you want that extra motivation. You want that bulletin board. You're saying we're 4th here. We're the defending champion. I think that might help them because it's not easy to go from the mountaintop and then go back down and got to do it again. So any kind of motivation for them will be great. But so far, what I've seen this team, they're very talented. Like I was getting to know some of the younger players, the defense. I've been watching a lot of the defense because you kind of know the offense. It's going to be Cooper Kupp, obviously Allen Robinson, and Stafford, personnel 11. They'll pick you apart with those playmakers. But on defense, I'm trying to see what's going on with some of these young guys. And so far, I've been very impressed. I think some of these edge rushers, I'm sure we'll get into it more, will probably turn some heads when the season comes.
No doubt, bro. And I agree 100% with what you were saying about them, I guess, essentially flying under the radar, because I think that's also a cure towards, when you have that Super Bowl hangover, when you fly under the radar, maybe the hangover isn't nearly as strong. And so I agree wholeheartedly. But Gilbert, you alluded to this and you talked about younger players on defense. With training camps now in full swing across the NFL, which players, either offense or defense, maybe even special teams, have really caught your eye? And what has been your biggest takeaway so far from Rams training camp?
Yeah, and you're asking for kind of the younger players, right? Unknown players, and okay. I'll start with the offense. People want to hear about the offense more. And after Jefferson went down, who was for sure going to be the number 3 wide receiver, and maybe there was some talk about maybe a little bit of competition because Tutu Atwell was a 2nd round pick last year, and people want him to do well, but it wasn't like that. It was for sure Van Jefferson next to Allen Robinson and Cooper Kupp. And then after that is a pretty noticeable drop off. So when they lost Van, like they have a 1-2 punch, and the depth is very thin. So I wanted to watch Tutu Atwell very, very close when the opportunities came, because when there was limited opportunities, he didn't really do much, even in the second team. So I'm like, okay, what's going on here? But now that I think I asked Sean McVay is what stood out, he said they're designing plays to fit his skill set. Whatever that he feels he excel in, they're gonna make it easier for him and give him those type of kind of plays. So they've been designing plays with Tutu, and he's been doing well. I know most of them haven't been coming with Stafford because he hasn't played, but John Walford and Bryce Perkins have been going to him pretty heavily. I'm getting to know the team, but the backup Walford had this nice rollout, threw across his body, and found Tutu Atwell for a deep bomb touchdown. So that's what the Rams want to see. Stretch the field. That's what they need, the speed. But Tutu's a little small on the smaller side. So you kind of worried about his game in the inside. But I've seen him make catches on the inside, take some big hits, and then also keep the ball. So we'll see with Tutu Atwell. They have Ben Skoranek. I haven't seen too much for him just yet, but he's getting a chance to at number 3. But on the defense side, like I mentioned, the edge rushers, they have some big dudes who are athletic. Terrell Lewis, Justin Hollins. They drafted a rookie, Daniel Hardy, who's a 7th round pick, but people really like his upside because of the tools. And I think that's what they do. They want big guys who are athletic, raw potential, and then you coach them up and you figure it out. So, Terrell Lewis, I was talking to him yesterday, and he was pretty kind of, I'll say mad when Von Miller took the snaps last year. So everybody's eager to come out. And then the DBs, man, David Long, Isaac Rochelle, Darion Kendrick, and Jacoby Durant. These 4 guys who are not named Jalen Ramsey or Troy Hill will need to step up. And so far, what I've seen, they're competitive, they have a nose for the ball, and they're versatile. So I'm very intrigued. It's just training camp, but I'm intrigued to see how the season goes for these young guys.
No doubt, Gilbert. And I just want to say, you talk about Tutu being small. I don't know how tall you are, but I think Tutu and I are the same height. We're about 5'8", 5'9". How tall are you, real quick?
You know, I'm not that tall either. I'm 5'9", but it felt like when I was
Okay.
talking to Tutu, he might be a little shorter, so they're kind of a little generous there. So it is a small frame, but that guy's a burner. So hopefully for him, he figures it out. But he is kind of, you know, at a disadvantage with the size.
Right. And we've seen players succeed in the NFL despite being, 5'9", 5'8". So that's definitely not something that's going to hinder him. But I just thought that was funny to bring up because, when I saw his height, I was like, oh, shoot, we're the same height. But Gilbert, bro, you mentioned Van Jefferson, right? And I think it was in your interview that you posted on Twitter or Instagram, I believe. You were talking to Sean McVay and you asked him about Van Jefferson. He talked about how he had to clean up his knee. He tweaked his knee. And they're not sure about a timetable. And I also heard about OBJ potentially coming back, but if Van Jefferson might not be there come week 1, we know OBJ isn't going to be there week 1. So is OBJ a realistic option for the Rams to bring back at all, or at this point?
Yeah, it's a little funny that Sean McVay is kind of pressing a little harder now for OBJ, saying, "Hey, in front of the cameras, come back, OBJ," or "Hey, we're waiting for you whenever the time is right." So, but the weird thing is, obviously he's pushing because of Van Jefferson, but the weird thing is that OBJ is not going to be ready, and at least that's what we think. We're just assuming here, but maybe he's not ready till October, November. But maybe Sean just wants to make sure, hey, when the time comes for the playoff run and it's December football, and when they're trying to make the Super Bowl, he wants OBJ to be ready and to remember that because the contenders come November, like say the Green Bay or Tampa Bay or whatever, they're going to be throwing some money, or even the Cowboys are hurting right now for wide receivers. They're going to throw the money. But I think Sean McVay wants to say, hey, remember us? We keep talking about you. Don't forget about us. I think it's more of that. But in the present time with the Van Jefferson thing, it sounds like he might miss a game or two in the regular season. They haven't gone that far yet. But when you're kind of, holding your breath after surgery and you don't really have a timetable, it could linger into the season. But they don't want to rush him. So these are going to be big opportunities for Tutu Atwell, Ben Skoranek. So, but when you have Cooper Kupp and Allen Robinson as your 1-2, you could get by. And they have some really good tight ends too, and Higbee and Blanton and Hopkins. So I know they like to kind of have 3 wide receivers out there. Maybe they could kind of figure something out with some personnel 12, and just make it work. But, I think right now, it's up to Tutu and Ben to figure it out. And I think so far Tutu has at least for 2 practices, has really taken the opportunity and he's been running with it.
And we want to see the young guys, especially because we know that they're hungry. Not to say that the older guys aren't hungry, but we want to see a guy like Tutu succeed. But in the event that the Rams aren't happy with his progress, I know there's not as many veteran receivers left on the market. Let's say the Rams choose to pivot away from Odell. Obviously, as you know, Julio's with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Do you see them going after a guy like a T.Y. Hilton in the free agency market, or maybe they trade for a vet? Is that anywhere in the realm of possibilities at all?
It hasn't gotten to that point. I think they want to give their guys a chance, especially when you drafted Tutu Atwell in the 2nd round. You got to give them an opportunity, and they really haven't done it. I know he was hurt, but to go and get OBJ and last year, and then go and get Allen Robinson, it just shows that okay, they want something else, and he hasn't really had an opportunity. So might as well now, when things happen with Van, give him a look, see what happens. It's training camp. It's still early, so I don't think they're going to go somewhere out elsewhere. And say they give him a game or 2, or maybe he's doing well in the preseason. He gets a game or 2. But I could see that. But say the preseason comes around and he's not making a mark and he's struggling, maybe like a Will Fuller. Will Fuller, has speed. He could stretch the field, and if that's what they want. I know he's a little risky with the injuries and all the off the field trouble stuff and suspension and all that. But when he's healthy and he's on, he's a great player. So. I could see something like that, but I really think they're going to give Tutu and Ben Skoranek and these tight ends too a chance to make it work. And it's a little tough too, because maybe you could lean on the running game a little more. Cam Akers, Darrell Henderson, but those guys are kind of coming off injury, so it's all a feel out right now. But it's only August 4th when we're recording this, so they got time to figure it out.
Right. Right. I agree. But Gilbert, speaking of another injured player, and you talked about this in your latest article, but as has been reported, quarterback Matthew Stafford has experienced pain in his throwing arm after 1 week of full activity in training camp. And so you talked about how essentially the Rams are taking a less is more approach with the star quarterback. I know it's early, but do you see this lingering or potentially, lingering into the regular season at all?
It could. I think it actually, I think it will. It's just the way it's his age, and it's kind of how much pain you're going to go on a weekly basis. And just talking to some of the B reporters from last year, or still around for this year, but around for last year, they said that was an issue. Like, they're trying to figure out, when to rest them, when to play them, or I mean, when to put them on the injury report, and just kind of figure out a balance. And that's what happens with older quarterbacks. They don't need to practice that much. They have experience, but they're dealing with the aches and pain. It's more of that, I think. And obviously, when you haven't thrown throughout the whole offseason program, and Matthew Stafford got an injection in his elbow, which sounds kind of painful, and he didn't throw for, 5 months or 6, and then he goes into training camp, and I was surprised that they went all in. He had a heavy workload. I'm like, oh, this Matthew Stafford's out here balling, throwing, velocity, touch, all that stuff. Cooper Kupp was getting some great balls from him, Allen Robinson, and then I think Stafford was saying, okay, the pain is too much. Like, obviously he's probably been sore, every day after practice, and he probably didn't want to say anything. And then after, okay, that's enough. They got to be smart here. It's only July or August. In July at the time, it's August. Say something now before it gets worse. And I think that's when they said, okay, let's hit the pause button here. Let's figure out a new plan. So the plan is now he's not throwing in team drills at least for the next 2 weeks. There's a chance he might throw in team drills before week 1. That game September 8th against the Buffalo Bills is coming pretty quickly, which would be a massive game. I'm excited for that game. But they're gonna like pretty much do the whole basketball thing, load management kind of thing. So he might throw in individual drills here and there, and he'll work on his cardio and work on some drop backs. But for the most part, his heavy workload, those days are over. So they're trying to be cautious, but I think it'll be something where the plan is to maybe decrease the pain, minimize the pain. So when the season comes, it's not like, okay, I can't, like my arm is going to fall off, but I'll give you what I can kind of thing. It's more, okay, I feel something here, but let's do it. I think they're trying to figure that out where the pain is a little more tolerable, and it's something he's going to have to deal with throughout the season, I think. But it sounds like right now they're not getting too concerned. They just want to like, okay, let's figure out a new game plan to deal with this.
And that's what I feel like smart organizations do. We saw that with Tom Brady when he was in New England. There were times where he wouldn't even practice, and it essentially be, like you said, more of like a load management type of thing. And so, I don't think this should affect Matthew Stafford too much. I mean, he didn't play in the preseason at all last year. I'm not saying he was injured last year, but he doesn't need, I guess, those extra reps, if you will. But Gilbert, you kind of alluded to this, and I guess I kind of already have your answer. But despite it being a miracle that he was even on the field for the Rams playoff run 6 to 7 months after tearing his Achilles, we saw Cam Akers struggle. And that's not his fault by any means. I'm just saying a lot of people blamed him. He had 172 yards on 67 carries, which was on 2.6 yards per carry, had 2 more fumbles and touchdowns. And so his postseason run left a lot to be desired, if I'm being generous. But with the concerns about Stafford's arm, I know he's coming off an injury. Same with Darrell Henderson. Should the Rams look to run the ball more?
Yeah, I think so. With the balancing of Stafford's arm, you don't have Van Jefferson, but it's just tough because he's coming back from that Achilles injury, and don't ask him about it. He's tired about talking about it. He hates talking about it. He wants to move forward. But he did come back for that playoff run, but now it's been like a year, and he's probably feeling much better now. He probably has more of the cuts now, the burst, and all that. And that's why maybe those numbers were a little shaky because he rushed it to come back, and it was a tough effort, and it was it felt like a miracle. Who comes back from a torn Achilles in 5-6 months? So props to him, but he wasn't the same dude. And I think now what they're trying to figure out is like, if you flash back to last summer, there was so much hype on Cam Akers. Cam Akers had such a great rookie year, like, oh, it's gonna be the next two-way guy, pass catching running back, who could be a bruiser downhill, 3 down back, and it was going that way, and then the injury happened. So they're trying to get Cam back to that, but again, kind of similar to Matthew Stafford, they don't want to rush it, and then it's kind of hard to get a feel for running backs in training camp, especially nowadays, because in the old days they didn't care. It was all smash mouth football. You got the pads on, we're gonna go full speed. With the running game, it's been very limited carries, and they don't run the ball that much, and when they do, It's very kind of, touch football, and then you maybe you get past the first guy, you make a cut here, and that's about it. Nothing really far or deep run. So it's hard to get a feel for how Cam's looking, but to me, he looks like he's in shape. He's not coming in overweight or anything like that. Just the small things to look at. When I see footwork for the individual period, quick, all that stuff, he still looks the same dude to me. But I just haven't seen it in team drills as much. Actually, Daryl Henderson has gotten most of the team drills, but not because he's ahead of Cam Akers. I know Sean McVay said that he feels like he has two starting running backs, but it's more kind of like, hey, we like both guys, but obviously Cam Akers is the guy at the end. But Henderson's coming from an injury too, so they've been limited with him too. But I think Cam Akers, we haven't seen it in team drills just yet, but that's for a reason. It's more to work on him being 100%, and then also don't get hurt in training camp kind of thing.
Because he got hurt in training camp last offseason. But I don't know if you saw that, but I shook my head because I'm a big fantasy football guy, and Cam Akers is a guy that I've been wanting to draft. And so when I hear something like that, Sean McVay saying that they might have 2-star running backs, I'm just like, yo, like who am I supposed to draft?
But I knew it was going to scare people when he said that, but it's more just to be nice to both running backs. I think coach speak.
Coach speak. I was just gonna say, yeah, I think I'd attribute it more to coach speak. And so to all the fantasy football owners out there, I wouldn't be as scared. But speaking of the ground game and being able to open up holes in the ground game, Gilbert, how confident are you in the Rams not only being able to protect an ailing Matthew Stafford, but how confident are you in the offensive line with Minus and Andrew Whitworth and opening up holes for Cam Akers, Daryl Henderson, and the rest of that Rams ground attack?
Yeah, offensive line and obviously the D line is hard to tell in training camp because you can't go full speed. But you could tell what might be a sack, kind of thing when the D linemen get really close to the quarterback and they give them that extra few seconds, but in your head in the real game that's a sack. So I try to count those. There hasn't been that many, so that's credit to the offensive line. And for the Rams, it's kind of nice to go from Andrew Whitworth to Joe Noteboom, who's doing well at left tackle. He was ready to go. They've been talking him up for years, and they've been working on his development. And Joe's been great at left tackle. And then the one question mark is at right guard. They have Coleman Shelton going against Logan Bruss, the rookie. And for the most part, those two guys have been doing well. I think Coleman's getting the edge because he's experienced, and I think it's been five years now, and he could play center too. That helps out with giving Brian Allen a breather every now and then. But so far, you got Rob at right tackle, Havenstein. So he's been doing well. So I think the entire offensive line with some new pieces has been okay. But you can't really tell what the old line to the real game start. But for the most part, I've seen some holes here and there for the running game. They're not really allowed to burst through it because, again, it's kind of touch football at this time of year. But I'm not concerned about the offensive line. I thought I was going to be because I heard about the right guard battle and then the new left tackle and all that. And so I was keeping a close eye on it. And I thought I would be writing more about it. But so far, I was like, hey, every day they're pretty steady. They're reliable, consistent. They got to figure out who's going to be the right guard. But for the most part, I like both guys. So I don't see much issues there. So when you're trying to draft the Cooper Kupp, Allen Robinson, Stafford, Cam Akers, you always got to think about the offensive line. And so far, I've been impressed.
Hey, well, Gilbert, I hope Vegas is listening because one of their biggest concerns outside of losing to Von Miller was the offensive line. And so if those perceived issues are somewhat solved, then it's like Vegas, I think they might need to, redo or I guess fix some of their betting odds. But then again, it is only August and there's still a whole bunch of training camp to go before football starts. And so maybe they have a chance to kind of fix things and whatnot. But before we wrap this up, and I talked about this at the top of the show, and this, I'm a Seattle guy, so I got to keep tabs on Bobby Wagner. So how's LA treating my guy, and how has he looked in training camp so far? Do you expect the Rams to give him a full allotment of snaps coming the regular season just because he's played so much in Seattle these last couple of years, especially as it pertains to time of possession? Or do you see him bouncing back and having another legendary type of season?
Yeah, I'll start with this one. Kind of a funny story, Calvin. There was a guy at Rams training camp, a fan. I think he was probably a Seattle fan, and he shouted, "Seattle misses you, Bobby." And the entire crowd looked at him like, "Hey, you got to cut that out. There's no Seattle here. It's all about the Rams now. They're moving forward. They don't want to remember those days because it's kind of awkward going from a rival to rival." So, but there's still a lot of love for Bobby Wagner. He's already a fan favorite. You hear Bobby's name all the time. Bobby, number 45. Sign this or we love you kind of thing. But on the football side, him being a 10-year vet or 11, I forget. He's been around the game. You don't need to prove anything. You would think he'll get a bunch of days off with the Aaron Donalds of the world and obviously Matthew Stafford and then the veteran guys like that who, when it comes to deloading day where guys are getting a little more rest, the veterans get it. But Bobby Wagner hasn't, I think, because he's trying to figure out the scheme and the defense. He's new. He wants to learn things. And that just shows you his work ethic. He wants to get it right. He's not saying, hey, I'm a Super Bowl champion. I'm a future Hall of Famer. I'm a 6-time first team All Pro, whatever, all these accolades. He wants to learn the scheme with Raheem Morris. He's going away from what he's used to in Seattle. So I haven't seen arrested from Bobby Wagner just yet. And he's getting better. Like the first week was learning how to call the defense. He was in the walkie-talkie, Raheem Morris shouting and trash talking with him. He's trying to get people in the right spots and then focusing on what the offense is doing. It's a lot for Bobby Wagner. So he wants to be out there. And then the week 2 came around. He's making plays. He had a nice pick 6. He jumped off 2 feet to catch that ball and then run down the field or down the sideline. And the whole team was ecstatic from offense to defense. They jumped on Bobby Wagner. So he's making plays and not just making plays. He's been very active. He's not just the kind of old school linebacker waiting for things to happen. He's going up and rushing. As you know, Calvin, his days in Seattle, he was a great rusher. So they're still going to do that with him. From what I've noticed out on the field, he's always, pushing the pocket, and then he's also defending as well. So I think it's going to be a big upgrade, and I've seen a lot in the tank for Bobby Wagner this summer.
I'm honestly not surprised, but one thing I do want to say is he looks a lot better in 54 than he does in 45.
It's a little awkward, right? 45, it throws me off.
It does, especially for a legendary type of player like him. Bill Gilbert, I always say this, but as the saying goes, time flies when you're having fun. I know you got practice, you got to get to training camp. You got to go out there and get back on the grind. But before we go, Gilbert, I want to give you the floor. Talk about Compas On The Beat, any sort of announcements you want to make, anything you got going on. The floor is yours.
That's why I love coming on your show, Calvin. You show love to all the projects I have. I try not to be a specialist, but just being a beat reporter, but I do a little bit of everything. So, yeah, and I'll start there with the Ram stuff. Make sure to read my work at the OC Register, LA Daily News, or just follow me on Twitter at G Manzano 24. I put all my links to my stories. I'll give you some updates from camp and all these things you want to know if you're a Rams fan or a fantasy football owner who has some Rams. Come to me. And then on the side, I want to have a podcast. I want to make my podcast grow. We talk a lot of football, and I'll just kind of give it a little wink. But it might be a Rams podcast coming soon. But I have a bunch of podcasts, Combat Sports, a sports and culture podcast. My culture being Mexican is important to me, so I kind of give it a little more flavor. Still talk football, but talk about my daily life, my co-host life, Fernando, and we're growing with 2 more people helping us out. So subscribe to the show, Compas On The Beat. Look out for the Rams podcast. Check out the Combat Sports stuff if you love boxing, MMA, wrestling. I could keep going on and on, but I'm not trying to be a one-trick pony. So hopefully, when you do a lot of things, you kind of get discouraged. Okay, I'm not doing that one well or that one well. But for the most part, I feel like I'm getting the hang of it, of the podcast life and all and social media, all that stuff. Being a writer I think will benefit at the end.
Hey, you doing your thing, Gilbert. Keep grinding, brother. For Gilbert Manzano, who covers the LA Rams for the Orange County Daily News, for the LA Daily News. I think I might have said Orange County Register, excuse me.
You got it.
And then the SoCal News Group. This is your boy Steezy A. Smith on another edition of On The Beat featuring the LA Rams. Peace out, y'all.